these town hall, these discussions, and who really recognize that at the end of the day, they are the ones responsible for themselves, their safety, and the safety of their families and neighbors. We do what we can to facilitate that, and having a great partnership with the people on this call is critical to getting it done and getting it done right. So thank you all for joining us. And my thanks also go out to Shannon and the entire team there. I've been doing this job for a little over 2 years now. I've been quite impressed with the dedication of the men and women that we are privileged to employ at the county, and their dedication to the folks that I am privileged to serve out in Orange County and in the canyons in particular. So I'm going to turn this over to the experts. There's a lot of great information that they're going to be able to present to you. And I know they also are very eager for your questions so that we get a sense of what is of interest, importance, and prime concern to you so that we can address it. So thank you for being with us. And thank you for the great work that county staff is doing on this effort. Finally, I have many representatives who are out in the community. I have many contacts out in the community. Please access any one of them. Call my office if there are things we need to know, if there are things that don't get covered on today's call, and that we can provide in any way some help. We're all in this together, keeping each other safe, and I thank you all. Thank you, Shannon.
Supervisor Wagner, thank you very much. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. We're going to move forward to the presentation. Next slide, please. So there's a high-level overview, and make note of this. And just so you know, we'll show this slide again as we approach the question and answer period later on during this meeting. But this is how you can ask questions. You want to ask a question, you want to provide comments, this is how you do it. If you logged in via Zoom on your computer or smartphone, what you want to do is click the Q&A box, and then you can type your questions or comments that way. Or another option, you want to ask a question, you can click that little small hand icon. And what that does is notify us that someone has a question. And then, as I mentioned earlier, one by one, we'll call on those individuals, give you permission to unmute yourself, and then you will unmute yourself. Click the unmute button, you can ask your question. Or for those folks might be driving or just more comfortable calling in via phone, what you want to do to raise your hand is *9. So push the star button, then number 9, and that will raise your hand, letting us know that someone has a question. And then when we're ready to call on you, we're going to ask you to click *6. So 2 numbers, one to raise your hand, *9. The other to speak and unmute yourself is *6. So again, we'll put this up as a reminder later when we get to the question and answer portion. But just for awareness, this is what you're going to encounter if you want to ask questions or provide comments. We just want to touch on a few guidelines for tonight. So basically, as mentioned earlier, the purpose of this is to get all our Unified Command partners together, provide some key information for you, and then hear from you out in the community during our question and answer period. That's what you're going to hear tonight. And again, those folks who join us on the phone or via computer, you are muted just as a courtesy, so no folks are talking over each other. We're trying to prevent any disruption. And basically, as a courtesy, be respectful of other speakers as well. During that question and answer period, we're going to call on those individuals one at a time, like I mentioned before. And again, you may hear some various opinions. We work with the canyon communities quite a bit. All the Unified partners do. You might hear some varying viewpoints, differing viewpoints, other comments. We just ask that everyone please be respectful of information, be respectful of others, and just show some courtesy tonight, and just keep that in mind, please. Next slide, please. So we're going to get into the meat of the presentation. We're going to kick it off first with the presenter from the California Geological Survey for the presentation.
Right, just a moment. Okay.
Mr. Paul Burgess.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, thanks very much, Edward, for getting the presentation. I can see perfectly it's in presentation mode. Awesome. Also, I just want to give, to start off here, thanks for everybody that's joining in, for all of you out in the community that are taking your time to listen and engage with what we have to share with you. And we all wouldn't be here without the rigorous preparation that my fellow co-presenters have received, and guidance at every step of the way with Shannon and his team. And we can all see that with what I think qualifies easily as the best explained and the most comprehensive set of instructions for a Zoom meeting that I've seen in the last, I don't know, I guess 2 years throughout this pandemic. So thanks very much for really laying it out for all of us there, Shannon. And thank you for your commentary as well, Supervisor Wagner. So we'll jump right into it here. We're going to be looking at a vegetation analysis for going into the second year of recovery following the fire. We're going to do it by evaluating post-fire vegetation and also taking a look at the ecosystem recovery within the perimeter of the fire. We're going to do that by comparing images like photographs and also satellite photographs, satellite data, and that satellite data is what we use to apply some remote sensing techniques. And we'll introduce the concept of how to use a normalized difference vegetation index to do that. I want to give credit to Justin Epting, who's a GIS specialist with us in the Forest and Watershed Geology Group at CGS, and also John Oswald, who's a supervisor in the Forest and Watershed Geology program. John was also the CGS lead for the WERT response. So thank you both for your efforts to get this presentation ready. You can take it to the next slide, please, Ed. So what we're looking at here, you all are really lucky to have a very talented public works that is eminently capable of just producing some amazing imagery in a very timely fashion. And I would direct everybody to the OC Public Works website, specifically the page on the bonfire, to get links to, I believe, the drone photography, or otherwise it can be available through OC Public Works website. But if you haven't seen it, it's very comprehensive. It covers the entire area that was burned, or most all of it. And so what we're looking at here is we're looking at one of these images from February 1st this year, after the first significant storm that happened in the canyon. And this is in the vicinity of Olive Drive, which, as many of you all know, you're there. It's one of our poster clouds of the entire burned area, produced a lot of debris. It's not alone, but the reason why we highlight this location and this particular image is that, as you'll see eventually, and many of you have seen this on the ground yourselves, it's kind of a representative look of what the area looked like right after that rainstorm. And then again, you'll see in a few slides in a moment what the area continues to look like as the area continues to evolve and recover. So pre-fire conditions are courtesy of Google Earth on the left. Obviously, it's very verdant. That's why all of you who make your home in the canyons there love being down there. And so times have changed. We'll go to the next slide. And on the next slide here, if you can, there it is. We're looking at a zoomed in image, thanks Ed, showing the differences of what you're looking at between source areas upslope of the channels that lead into that main channel that is descending out of the picture down towards homes on Olive Drive and vicinity. And you can see essentially that there's not a lot of recovery per se at this point in time. Everything is pretty scarred from the burn. If you can go to the next slide, please, Ed. Here, in contrast, we're looking at October 10th, and now what you can see is that there's a lot of recovery with grassland type vegetation that's making its way back. And it makes sense because, like many things that are burned, when you have shrubs or even trees, or, depending upon the burn severity, which we'll look at next, it's kind of a succession. Some of you familiar with ecosystems and wildlife biology will recognize that. But again, as residents and locals down there, you see that frequently. The grasses come back first, and so that's going to be an important part of the narrative that we want to get across here tonight. You can go to the next slide, please. What we're looking at here, hopefully many of you are already familiar with this image. This is taken from the WERT report that was produced for the bonfire. And that WERT report, again, to clue in anybody else that is still not yet familiar, that stands for Watershed Emergency Response Team. It's an effort co-led by the CGS and also by CAL FIRE. And it starts with taking a look at what happened in the fire and how badly areas were burned or not. And so you can see visually in a color ramp between green to red, there's not too much high severity. There is some. For numbers, you can look at the bottom left of the screen. There's a little table that's kind of camouflaged there. But you can see that the moderate burn category dominates at 60%. And so the moderate and the high burn severity are driving the post-fire impacts. But the burn severity also affects the recovery rate of vegetation. You can go to the next slide, please. This is what the area looked like before the world changed, at least for its present iteration of change via the fire. And so what you can see here with this pie chart, this is making me hungry thinking about pie coming up here for the holidays. About 80% of that pie is shrub and scrub. That's what dominates the area that was burned within the bonfire. And that's important to keep in mind, because it's going to affect the way that we calculate the response of the vegetation in the fire area itself. So we'll get into the next slide and we'll just lay it out exactly how we do that. So what we're looking at here are a few different things, and I want to guide everybody just first to look at the left-hand side of the screen, which is the image that shows the fire perimeter for the bonfire. There's also the Silverado fire as well, off to the southwest. And then you can see, what looks like a bunch of, candy sprinkles in the image between purple or, sort of like darker green above it. And what these dots represent is they represent sampling of the area that was taken using the Sentinel-2 satellite data set. And what that means is that, there's so many satellites orbiting around our planet, and they do really great things for us. And in this case, they're really, they're basically stepping up as the MVP for what we want to learn about the recovery in this area. The area that was burned was burnt. So what we see when sunlight reflects off of grass or foliage or trees or whatever it was that is there after the fire represents data that we get from the burned area. But in order to take a look at what has actually changed, we need to take a representative sample from an area that is essentially similar type of vegetation adjacent to the fire that was not burned. And that is what represents the swarm of, roughly, equal area of dots just north of the fire. So that way we have a sample set that will give us kind of a control to analyze how an area that is in the same area that wasn't burned contrasts with the area that was burned. And we quantify that by computing something called the normalized difference vegetation index. And so at this point, images come across faster, right? They speak 1,000 words. And so while I've been saying all these words about, what the image on the left means, I'm sure many of you have already started to stare at the graphic on the right. But to train your eyes on it, what you can see here is that you're looking at, obviously, there's, a green tree or a green shrub, and then there's a dead tree, or perhaps something that, is deciduous. Either way, there's a lot of chlorophyll, there's a lot of life in the tree on the left, and there's not so much on the right. In the same sense, after something gets burned, it's not alive. The chlorophyll is not there. So without getting too much into the math, and we're happy to go through this later for anybody that would like it, but if you look at the area right below the trees, you can see that there are ratios that are being generated. There's a ratio on the left and a ratio on the right. And so before fire on the left, after fire on the right, the higher the ratio is, approaching a value of 1 per se, you have a living, you have an NDVI that represents an area that has not been burnt. On the right, you can see that it's significantly lower. And so what that represents is that you have an area that's been burned. So comparing the differences between these ratios across the area of the fire is what we'll do next. And so we can go to the next slide, please, Ed. And on the next slide, again, a few things to note here. The main observations, I'll just go through those right at the start for everybody. The vegetation levels represented by NDVI will vary greatly from year to year. It depends on water. It depends how healthy the vegetation is, how much of it is growing. So they're going to be driven by moisture levels and vegetation composition And so that depends what shrubs are growing, how much you have, what amount of chlorophyll is in those shrubs. And so that's going to drive the relative value of that NDVI that you're looking at. The second observation point is that, we'll get to this in a minute, but the overall recovery rate is going to be over 50%. And that is based on what we're seeing with NDVI. So again, your eyes might be, deceived by the photograph that you saw at the start, but that's going to come into play. It's not perfect. It's not what you see on this slide is exactly what it is, but based on the remote sensing data, it's an important tool that we use to calibrate how cautious to be in assessing the likelihood of debris flow generation in the burned fire, the burned area. And then 3, most of the recovery in the previous areas of shrubland is now grasses. So that lines up with what I said earlier, the grass is coming back first. Mechanically, what that means in this image, hopefully many of you have been kind of looking at that as I've walked through these observations, is that NDVI fluctuates. You can see it going up from 2018 to 2019. But what I want to train everybody's eyes on is that inflection point where 2020 pre, you see that tab on the horizontal part of the graph here, you see this divergence away from what would otherwise be the expected level of NDVI. And that is value A, which is the fire-induced change from the natural state. B, on the far right-hand side of this image, that distance from the bottom of the graph to the point that your red line is located at is the amount of vegetation that's recovered based on this satellite-based analysis. And then C is the distance that we still have to go to get back to what we would expect for a healthy NDVI, as compared with the adjacent area of unburned ground. All right, next slide, please, Ed. So what you're looking at here, another pie chart combined with a line chart, but the main takeaways from it are that the forest and the shrublands had similar loss of NDVI following the fire, and they've also experienced similar rates of recovery. So you can see that those 2 lines, the top line on the far right of the graph and the bottom line, so the dark green and the sort of middle or the light green, they're parallel to one another. So that represents a similar rate of recovery. And you can see in the second observation that the grasslands have the lowest loss of the NDVI, which is expected due to lower biomass. It's faster to burn through grass than it is a tree, right? So it's going to come back, but it's not going to come back to levels. They've recovered to 2018 pre-fire levels, but not to 2019 or 2020 pre-fire levels. So everything is still in recovery, but the grasslands are dominating the signal that we see of the overall recovery for the fire. You can go to the next slide, please, Ed. This is it's a great slide here because what it's showing is, with color coding for whether something was burned at high severity through moderate to low. It's using the same colors that we see in the burn severity map that I showed a few slides ago. We see some observations here. The pattern is consistent across all of the burn severity classes. So for the higher the burn severity, the larger the decrease in NDVI, which makes sense. And the steeper the increase in 1 year post-burn values. So they're bouncing back. Secondly, all burn severity classes remain below 2020 pre-fire conditions. So again, based on the angle of the line here, you're looking at the relative rate that these categories are bouncing back in this period of recovery. Next slide, please, Ed. This is showing how the vegetation affects the burn severity. And so what you can take a look at here is that between forests, shrub and scrub, and grasslands, you have a different distribution of the way that they were burned. Forest had the most the most highly burned areas, and then it dwindles off to shrubs and scrubs in the middle there, and then you see no high severity within the grasslands. And to just sum up visually what you're looking at here in these graphs, again, to just walk right through these observations right at the point, the forest had the highest percentage of high severity burn, shrublands had the highest percentage of moderate severity burn, and grasslands had the highest percentage of low and very low unburned. So what that means is that because the grasslands had the highest percentage of low and unburned areas, they are now dominating the recovery signature that we see in the fire. Go to the next slide, please, Ed. So what this means is that we will continue to monitor the recovery for years 2 and 3. What does that mean? Specifically from us, it means that luckily, for me and for everybody in the affected area here, my colleagues at the CGS office in Los Angeles, and also distance is not a factor. John is happy to come all the way down from Eureka, and I'm happy to see John anytime he does. But should there be a rainstorm or a projected rainstorm of some consequence that will eclipse thresholds that are likely to produce debris flows as modeled by the parameters set forth from the USGS and that were outlined in the WERT report, then we will be down and we will be taking a look at what actually happens in your community. But in the meantime, using remote sensing data, using field-based reports, several of you out there I know on the call, I've been very fortunate to have a relationship with some of you via text message where I will unsolicitedly receive updates. And I'm happy to have those, because anytime it rains, it helps us calibrate what the response is from the rain as it falls on the ground versus what we think might happen. And the only way to actually test a hypothesis or to test an idea is to actually find out what happened. So the areas, and all of you know this, that have been very, again, much problem children for the whole area it goes along the length of Silverado Canyon, but the area particularly near Olive Drive, and then of course Spring Canyon that drains into Williams Canyon almost at the confluence with Canyon Road heading south towards Majeska. Those are areas that we will continue to pay a special attention to, because as you see in point 2 here, we want to do this because these areas have higher vegetation loss, the darker areas, and that vegetation loss, the higher vegetation loss, is occurring in high and moderate hazard potential basins. And that checks out with the response that we've seen and that many of you see down there. You're starting to know the areas that are becoming flashier and more conducive to creating problems. So to wrap it all up, the last slide, Ed. This is just what this all means. So these are the findings. I'll read through them one by one. Debris remains on poorly vegetated hill slopes available for transport in storms. There's still debris out there. And that's why the thresholds, and the next speaker, Alex Tardy, will get into what's going on with those, or why they've been set and why they remain the way they do. But thresholds have not changed for potential debris flow generation, because there's not actually that much recovery in the areas that have a high capacity to impact areas that are highest, or that are highest at risk for experiencing debris flow. So vegetation recovery does appear greatest in channels and in the axis of draws. Grass dominates much of the hill slope vegetation in areas of the pre-fire chaparral, the shrub, and the scrub. The NDVI shows some recovery, but it also shows the lowest recovery in the chaparral, in the scrub and the shrubland area. The most common vegetation upslope of these identified hazards is chaparral, scrub, and shrub. And the NDVI shows greatest vegetation loss of the highest debris flow hazard. So that last point in this finding is really what's crucial here. The NDVI shows the greatest vegetation loss in the areas of highest debris flow hazard. For additional considerations, existing thresholds appear appropriate for the hill slope response observed during year 1 and going into year 2 so far. Only portions of the burn area have experienced storms at or above threshold intensity. So not burn area wide, and we're all grateful for that. So the recommendation is keep thresholds as they are, and then monitor the coming storm season and evaluate the thresholds based on what happens with the storm response. So please let us know what happens down there. Please feel free to inundate us, my team, myself, with what data you have. You can send photos, you can send video, just text message and email. We can facilitate how to do that, but that truly is crucial, because depending upon what is happening on the ground is one of the first key steps to drive our participation to come out into the field and to take more detailed measurements, which ultimately help everybody. So next slide, just for some final photos. And that's really it. So I know that questions will come at the end. That's a lot of information, and I appreciate you all for hanging on throughout all of that. And feel free to fire away with questions or any concerns or input you have later on in the talk. So with that, I'll hand it over for now. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time here tonight. Thanks, Ed.
Paul, thank you so much. Obviously, a lot of good information, a lot of details for folks out there, and a lot of good images as well, courtesy of our drones. So next on our agenda we're going to have Alex Tardy of National Weather Service. But just a reminder, we see a couple hands up for questions. Just as a courtesy for everyone, to keep this moving along, we're going to hold all questions until our question and answer period later on after all presentations. That way, just be respectful of everyone's time. Folks who want to hear all the information first, we're going to take questions near the end. So the next up is Alex Tardy.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone. I work at the National Weather Service, which is located down in Rancho Bernardo. We serve San Diego, Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. We are part of NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And you likely know us from alerts that go to your phone or alerts that go on to your TV or interrupt your radio broadcasts. Those are emergency alerts through the emergency alert system. But in the past several years, you may also have seen alerts on your phone, which are called wireless emergency alerts. The two are different, but both of them are designed to alert you about hazardous weather, weather that will impact your property, roads, or even potentially impact someone's safety and their life. So I'm here to talk to you about the alerts, about the thresholds, and of course, a little bit about the weather that might affect us in Orange County, and specifically the bonfire. There's two things off the bat I want you to understand, and Paul went through a lot of this. So when it comes to a burn scar, we can see a combination of material that comes down the mountain. Now, a lot of us have heard about the Montecito burn scar and the event that occurred there on the Thomas Fire. That was literally large debris, the entire side of the hill, rocks, logs, stumps, ash, dirt, and mud. What we've seen, most recently, including the bonfire, and a few years ago, the Holy Fire, was a lot of mud and some debris in terms of rocks and logs. But it wasn't anything that we saw like the Montecito event. Both of them are damaging, both of them are impactful, and both of them you need to be concerned about. But a lot of times, when we envision something, we might envision on the left or we might envision on the right. In our case, in the bonfire in Orange County, what we've seen so far is more like what I show on the right-hand side. And in particular, here, I got to thank Joanne for these photos. I also received some photos from Orange County Fire Authority. The event we had in March 2021, it was high impact, especially if you lived in that area or your vehicle was in the area or your house was affected. We had multiple houses, at least 8 of them, that had damage from mud, water. Remember, in a debris flow, we get a lot of water as well. It's not just material. We typically get a combination of muddy chocolate water like you see here. We had homes impacted. Like I said, it was up to 8 or 9 of them that were impacted. There were 8 or 9 vehicles that were damaged, that were moved, that were actually relocated from the force of that mud, that water, and the small debris that came down with the bonfire. Now, here's what you may not be aware of. The rainfall was a very short duration, likely for most of you unimpressive, 1/3 of an inch of rain, but it came down in 15 to 30 minutes on top of the burn scar. So when we talk about burn scars, we want to be sure that we understand it's about the rainfall rate. It's not about the total rain. It's not about, well, it rained for 7 days or it rained 3 inches over the course of 3 days. It's about the rainfall rate. As little as 1/3 of an inch in March 2021 came down in 15 to 30 minutes early in the morning. Some of you probably know very well the time, around 6:30, and produced what you see on the screen here. Just a couple months ago in late October, the last time we've really had any rainfall, we had a similar event, and it was up in the El Dorado fire scar. It was a short duration event, about an hour and a half, about 1/2 inch to maybe 2/3 of an inch of rain came down in that 90-minute period. and it was too much for the burn scar. The burn scar produced a lot of mud, a lot of water, a lot of debris, and caused impact, closed a road. Luckily, didn't damage any homes, but did cause a vehicle to get pushed off the road up in the area near Oak Glen. So El Dorado, a lot like the bonfire, are on year 2 for the burn scar, but they still remain potentially high impact. I'm not going to show the video here, but I do encourage you to go onto YouTube and search December 6, 2018. It's about a 3-minute video, and it shows the holy fire in Orange County. And you'll be impressed by the force that comes down in these burn scars when we get heavy rain. I also want to remind you, if you ever see a sign like this, when flooded, turn around, don't drown. The National Weather Service partners with a lot of the agencies that are on the panel here and in the town hall, but we put these signs in place for the very reason that the area that you're approaching is flood prone, it has a history of flooding, and there may be deadly or dangerous flooding that occurs in that area. We put it in areas just that are prone to heavy rain, such as Arizona crossings, and we also put it in areas prone to heavy rain, like associated with a burn scar. This program is designed to be an educational program. It's not designed to all of a sudden go up when it's pouring rain or the hillside's coming down. It's designed to remind us and those visiting the area constantly, okay, you're entering an area prone to debris flows, flash flooding, high water crossing, that type of thing. Now, here at the National Weather Service, I mentioned earlier, we issue alerts, and you're probably familiar with some, if not all of those alerts. There's numerous ways to follow those alerts. They may interrupt your TV, like I mentioned, your radio. They may come onto your smartphone. Some of you may even monitor it online. If you're the type that likes to monitor the rain as it's coming in, I recommend you visiting radarweather.gov and monitor it that way. Or pick your favorite app on your phone. Make sure, however, that you also are displaying the alerts that may be associated with that rain. Now, on our webpage, weather.gov, you can also find these alerts. They'll be posted in these pretty colors like this on the screen when they are active. When there's nothing going on or nothing expected in the next couple days, you probably will see a lot of white and no alerts. But you can go onto our webpage at weather.gov and follow all the alerts that are in effect for either your area or near your area and get all the latest details. So I encourage you to do that, especially before it rains and not while it's raining. Why not while it's raining? Well, there's different levels of alerts and there's different level of messaging that you've probably already been used to and may likely see again this year. So the first phase is the get ready. That's the weather forecast. We can actually practice that today because we have heavy rain potential next Tuesday. So we can actually practice that now. So that's the forecast over the next several days. It's time to get ready. We're in the blue phase. Nothing bad's happening. There's no need to leave, but it's time to get ready. Maybe clean out the gutters. Make sure that the drainages, the sandbags are in place. Make sure you have an alternate route in case there is an alert in your area. Then we go into the flood watch phase. That's the evacuation warning. You may get a notice from your local emergency services about an evacuation warning. That's also probably likely associated with the issuance of a flood watch. That doesn't mean we think it's going to rain. That means we expect it's going to rain. And it's not just a rain. We expect it to be a critical rain, meaning the thresholds that Paul talked about that could produce mud and debris flows on that particular bonfire burn scar. So that's the flood watch phase, often timed with the evacuation warning phase or the voluntary evacuation of your area. Then we get down into the red or purple. That's the flash flood warning. At that point, it means we see the whites of its eyes. we see on weather radar and rain gauges that we have now reached or about to reach or even have exceeded the actual thresholds for the fire. On the burn scar bonfire, we actually have a threshold of about a ½ inch per hour. Doesn't sound like much, I know, but it's all about the rainfall rate. The USGS, California Geological Survey, have done numerous scientific studies showing how important it is on the rate for that burn scar. When you get to the flash flood warning phase, that's when your phone goes off. That's when your TV's interrupted. At that point, it may be too late to leave. It may be, and you may hear from your emergency services or the sheriff, shelter in place. Or you may even hear at that time or maybe shortly before about an evacuation order or a mandatory evacuation. So it's important. All three of these steps are designed to give you adequate lead time to make your own decision, to be prepared. And then when you get into the red phase, to understand that, okay, it's not about it might rain hard, it's raining too hard. And there's a good chance, a likely chance, that mud and or some debris flow is either already occurring or will be occurring shortly. On your phone, you may or may not be aware of this, but when we issue that red phase or the flash flood warning, it'll pop up on your smartphone. And so there's different types of alerts that we send out, and flash flooding associated with burn scars is one of those alerts you should be very familiar with, so that when you do get it, you understand that this is imminent. You understand that you're in that area. You understand that, no, maybe this is not intended for my friend in Riverside. It's actually intended for me in the bonfire in the Santa Ana Mountains. So these type of alert messages can be honed into a very small area, like a burn scar, like the bonfire. And those messages will come directly from us, indicating that, okay, it's imminent, too much rain has occurred, and you need to take your final action, whether that be shelter in place or evacuating, if it's safe. Now, for those of you who follow us on social media, which are quite a few people, especially on Twitter, this is an example of what you might see on Twitter when a warning or an advisory, which is below a warning, lesser impact. But a warning level, this is what you would see. A flash flood warning, it would show the area that we literally created by hand. And in your situation, the most concern would be us issuing a warning over the bonfire. So that's an example of what it would look like over a message on Twitter that we have sent out directly from our office. You may follow other agencies like Orange County Fire Authority, Caltrans, for example, the Sheriff Department, and they will also be either retweeting or showing their own type of messages. Here's an example of the Holy Fire from a couple years ago, and it was issued for part of the Santa Ana Mountains, part of Orange County, and extreme southwest Riverside County. And the warning message will also include information about the population that's affected, the number of schools that are affected, and even the hospitals that are affected in that area. Again, we can create this actual red polygon area, any size and shape, but the purpose of it is to show the area that is really at risk in this flash flood warning message. And in your case, it would be the bonfire area. You can also follow these messages on No Weather Radio or through the traditional emergency alert system. What is that? Well, that's the message that interrupts your TV or your radio broadcast. There are some changes this year. So if you do happen to get an advisory, which is the lower level, or the warning, which is the highest, most urgent, imminent level, some of the messaging will look a little bit different. For example, some of our products now will have segments that say what, where, when, and what are the impacts. Instead of saying 5 different type of advisories, it'll just say flood advisory. And so for you, the most important thing is to understand that when we issue a flood watch, which should be 3 to 48 hours before it rains hard, When we issue a flood advisory, which is the lesser of the two, more nuisance type of flooding, or if we issue the flood warning, which may go likely on your phone or the emergency alert system, the highest level, it's important that you understand those different level of alerts, when they might be issued and why they are issued. Now, if you have trouble following some of the information that we send out, it's a lot of information during an average winter storm. Totally get it. Visit weather.gov a few days before the storm, like this evening or tomorrow. Check out the different options that are on there. As we get closer to rain, check it again. As we get the day before, check it again. When the rain's expected in the afternoon, check it in the morning, that type of thing, just so you get comfortable and used to seeing how things change dynamically on the page. We do expect rain on Thursday, tomorrow. It is expected to be mostly light rain, briefly moderate, but mostly light rain. Not a concern for the bonfire, it looks like at this time. But next Tuesday could be a different story, as we're expecting much more significant rain and potentially heavy rain by next Tuesday. Now, if you're the type that likes to monitor the weather, like me, you can monitor it also from our webpage in real time. You can see how much rain fell in the past 15 minutes, how much rain fell in the past 30 minutes, how much rain fell past hour. Of course, this is not a forecast of what's expected, but it is a way where you can be situationally aware. You can watch the rain come in on the radar or using the weather stations as it moves through the LA basin and even before it makes it into Orange County. So this is a tool that's available on our webpage for those who really want to be honed into what's really going on. I mentioned tomorrow some rain. Here's our latest forecast, and we have a full briefing available on our weather.gov webpage too, and our YouTube channel. But I thought I would include with you information about the next two storms. So tomorrow's storm looks to generally be light, but we will see rain. It hasn't really rained since October 25th. So it's been a long time. It's been a very dry start to this upcoming winter. But we do expect rain over the burn scar. We're not expecting more than a 1/4 inch, and it won't all come down at once. It will be distributed through the late morning hours and into the early afternoon. So that's overall good news, but that is rain, okay? So we haven't seen rain for a long time, so it might make some of us nervous, as you would expect, downstream of the burn scar area. Now, when we get into next week, and of course this is going to change as we get a little closer and get more information, like anything, we are expecting the potential for heavy rain early next week. That'll be on Tuesday. Sometime Monday night into late Tuesday, that window. And this could be our first test of having significant rain over Orange County, Santa Ana Mountains, the bonfire burn scar. First test of this year of having significant rain, where we potentially could get into those thresholds, which again are about a 1/2 inch in 1 hour, the rainfall rate. What I'm showing you here are the rainfall totals. When we get closer to the event, we work very closely with local officials who are on this call here, on this town hall webinar. We work very closely with them, and we provide them with the rainfall rate that we expect before it even shows up on the weather radar, before it even shows up as clouds, before it even shows up as rain or a drop in the bucket. We'll work with them and provide them with information about how much rain is expected in a 1 hour period, when that is expected, and what the confidence is on that. So you can see significant rain is possible early next week. That's all I have for you, and I'll hang in on the webinar, on the Zoom meeting, to see if questions are out there related to National Weather Service. Thank you.
Alex, thank you very much. That was a lot of great information as usual, very helpful, very insightful. A lot of good information for folks out there to be aware of as you referenced, next Tuesday's rainfall, getting ready for that over this coming weekend. So moving ahead, we're going to move into the debris flow preparedness and response portion of this meeting. Our first presenter under that section is of Orange County Public Works, Mr. AJ Jaime.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, AJ.
Great. Just want to let you know that I've got kicked off on the PowerPoint presentation, but I have a copy here, so I'm just going to go through it here, and then if Edward, if you can just change the slides for me. Like I said, I got kicked off on the internet. So what I want to discuss here is by the way, my name is AJ Jaime. I'm with OC Public Works Operations and Maintenance, and I'm just going to briefly discuss some of the things that we do here at Public Works to prepare for debris flows and in general storm events that are coming up. Here at Public Works, we do routine maintenance inspections on your canyons and roadways. That's cleaning out your storm drains, ensuring the roadways are free and clear, sandbags are placed where they need to be, and ensuring basically that the roadway is safe. What we also do is we clean, like I said, the catch basin, drains, road shoulders. Some of the things that we do for, in particular, burn scar areas. You saw some of the photos there, some of the discussions from the other agencies on the hillsides when they get scarred or burned. So we'll look at that information. We send out drones, take a look and see what the magnitude is of the burn scar area and kind of try to predict where we may see some issues. So wherever we can, we'll install some barriers such as sandbags, silt boards, concrete K-rails, and all that is intended to make our roadways safe and clear so that the residents as well as emergency vehicles can pass through. Here at the Public Works, we maintain 380 miles of channels, just to give you an idea of the magnitude in the area that we actually maintain other than just the canyon area. We have 340 miles of roadways. During storm events, we really concentrate and monitor the weather forecast and what's transpiring, radar, where the bigger cells are heading, so we can move equipment and resources to those areas where we think we might have some issues start occurring. We also respond to residents' concerns and emergencies. Right now, because of the burn scar area, we do focus heavily in the canyon area to see what's happening there, the conditions, and ensuring that the roadways are free and clear. We have field staff that are constantly patrolling your streets, and we also stage equipment and materials nearby in case it's needed during an emergency. Another thing we do here at Public Works is we're part of the Unified Command with the Sheriff's Department and Orange County Fire Authority. And when we have severe weather or issues, or we have a major debris flow or something like that, we'll gather together in a Unified Command, and as a team, we'll make critical decisions. Next slide, please, Edward. So I want to talk about a little bit about what is our mission here at Public Works. Well, our mission is to protect the public from flooding and provide a safe passage for emergency and public use. That's our main goal. And one of the things I want to talk about is, what does Public Works do? Well, Public Works maintains all of our roadways that belong to the County of Orange. So that for the canyon areas, that's basically mostly all of your arterials roadways, like Silverado, Majeska, Sunny Oak Canyon, the major arterial roadways. So we have to make sure that the roadways are free and clear. Next slide please. This slide, and again, I cannot see what's being shown, so I'm hoping this is showing just some photos of the fires that just took place on the Holy Fire, and just kind of give you guys an idea of the magnitude of the fire. Next slide, please. This one's just showing the burn scar areas. At Public Works, we actually droned a lot of these areas to try to see what the impact was of the fires, and then kind of get an idea of where actually we may have debris flows. As you know, being charred, everything's going to run down the hills. It funnels down into the canyons, into ravines, and then it makes its way down towards the residents and our roadways, and eventually to the creeks. Next video, please. This is just some photos of just some previous and past debris flows that we've had. And you can see the devastation that some of these debris flows can cause. So it's very important. Want to reiterate what Paul and what was discussed about listening to and adhering to the warnings and anything that a lot of the canyon people are very well versed on what takes place there and the severity of storms and what could happen. So it's very prudent that you guys make sure that you install sandbags where you can and try to protect your property as best you can. But remember that to heed the warnings, and your life is more important. Material things can be replaced. And as you can see from the photos, they can be very devastating, hazardous. Next slide, please. These are just some photos of some preparations that we do during or after storm, or I'm sorry, after burn areas. So again, remember, at Public Works, we're here to protect the roadway, ensure we have free passage for the residents, emergency vehicles, emergency situations, and we want to keep it free and clear. So we kind of have an idea of where some of these debris flows may come and impact your roadways. So we try to protect that and keep them free and clear. So we install these concrete K-rails that you'll see, some silt boards. The silt boards are the ones in the middle, and then sandbags wherever we can. We also put rice bales in some of the slopes, and that's just to slow down minor debris flows that come down. Next video, please. If you see, this is a picture of some of the rain gauges that we install in burn areas. And the reason for that is to try to give us real-time rainfall rates and these are closely monitored. And the reason for that is, like I said earlier, having that information on what exactly the storm is doing, and especially especially near a burn scar area, helps us with determining, what resources we're probably going to need or what things may start to develop, and have us make some critical decisions on resources and warnings. Next video, please. The next video, or the next slide, is some pictures of some monitoring cameras that we've installed in the canyons and actually throughout throughout the county and different areas and hotspots. So we'll install these where we think there's a potential for debris flows or issues that come up with flooding. And right now, I think in the canyon, we probably have around 3 or 4 of them. Next video, please. These are just some pictures of staging equipment and materials that we normally strategically place at different locations. And depending on the magnitude of the storm event, we will then move our resources closer and have them on standby to deploy. Next video, please. These are some of the site locations that we have for sandbag distribution. We have one in Portola, one in Majeska, and of course you have the Fire Station 14, which is nearby on Silverado. And of course we have the one on Classell facility, which is our main area. Canyon residents are allowed to receive 50 unfilled sandbags. So if you come to any of those locations, we can give you 50 empty sandbags. We'll have sand there for you guys to fill them on your own. And again, it's best to do that now. Like Alex said, we have a storm coming tomorrow, a minor one, but for the next Tuesday one, I would suggest that we make some preparations for that in advance. Next slide, please. This one is just some general information that we have on our website for homeowners, for guides on debris flows, erosion control, and flooding issues. Next slide, please. This is just some contact information. If you ever need to get a hold of us, we're here for everybody in the public and especially the canyon right now during these times. The first number on top is our hotline, is our main number, 714-955-0200. You can reach us at that phone number for any issue or concern, and we'll dispatch an inspector to respond to your concerns. You can also use that number to contact us for appointments to pick up sandbags for your use. We also have a Department of Operations Center that's activated during major events or when we have issues or emergencies. And in that case, when our DOCs open, that's the number to call. And again, you can also call the other number. It just gets transferred over during whenever we have the Department of Operations Center is open. And that's all I have. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Great. AJ, thank you so much for Orange County Public Works. We'll keep this moving. Just be mindful of time. Next up, we'll have with Orange County Sheriff's Department, Captain Gary Knutson.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here in order to discuss this very important topic with you all. Again, our component of this is just ensuring that everyone is as prepared as possible. We know that there's a lot of residents out there, and we recommend that any of the residents in our county areas that are adjacent to these wildland areas, regardless of whether there's been fire damage or burn scar, to be prepared constantly, because we know that these types of events can happen rapidly and sometimes unexpectedly. We want to just encourage folks to be prepared, to be self-sufficient for anywhere from maybe 5 to 7 days in the event that something like this happens. And just remind folks to visit some of our resources we have available on the Orange County Sheriff's website, ocsheriff.gov. And you can put in emergency management. It'll take you to the emergency management page, which has a bunch of kind of checklists, plans you can get together, communication plans, emergency planning as far as what supplies and whatnot you'll need so you can be ready in the event that something does happens. We also want to talk about a little bit about the alert and warning system as well. Please sign up for Alert OC. That way you can get the notifications on your phone when there's some type of impending notification. You need to be informed of some type of emergency. And then again, Ready OC is another site you can go to through the county to get information on being prepared. On the alerts and warnings, there's 2 types that we would generally issue: an evacuation warning, which is voluntary during a wildland fire or flash flood watch. We would issue evacuation warning. That's really the time to make sure everything's ready to go, that your vehicle's parked, placed in a manner you can get it out. You have fuel, you have whatever valuables and important stuff you're going to evacuate. If you choose to evacuate, load it up and ready to go. And that way you're prepared in the event that the evacuation order comes out, which is when we're basically issuing a mandatory evacuation. Or if you decide on your own, based on what you're seeing in the rain in your particular area, there's a lot of little different crevices and canyons and different nuanced areas out along Silverado Canyon. And for the folks who live out there, they know those areas very well. Make a self-determination. Hey, I think it's time to go and evacuate. So we want to just help people to be prepared, be cognizant of the situation, which I think most of the folks out there are aware of where they're living at and the type of risks that can happen during this type of event. So again, just want to stress to be prepared, visit those websites, look at the information, and get your plan together in case you have to put it in action. And that's all I have.
Great. Captain Newton, thank you very much for that information. Okay, next up, we're going to have Orange County Fire Authority. Our presenter tonight will be Battalion Chief Scott Wiedensoller. Hopefully Scott did not get cut off. Scott, if you're muted, maybe perhaps you can unmute yourself. Okay, we might have to return to Scott after, or maybe, maybe chimes in during the question and answer portion, possibly. We'll move ahead and move to the Social Services Agency with Delcy Hines to talk about care and shelter.
Okay, Shannon, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank you for the opportunity for us to speak this evening on the mass care and shelter piece. So my name is Delcy Hines, and I'm the emergency manager for Orange County Social Services Agency. And I'm joined also by my colleague, Diana LaRusso, and some of our Red Cross partners. Diana and I, we are the emergency managers for the Orange County Social Services Agency, and we are the designated county lead for mass care and shelter as designated by the board. And we do this in collaboration with a number of partners in order to meet the needs of our community. So we work together very closely with American Red Cross, Orange County Animal Care, Orange County Department of Education, and a variety of other community partners. And, as you've heard already tonight from our OCSD partners, that with all disasters, it is the best way you can be ready is to plan in advance. You need to be ready to kind of help yourself, have your essential items gathered and take them with you when you leave. Our residents with access and functional needs, we always want to encourage you to leave early. Residents that have large animals or livestock, leave early. Even if you leave during a voluntary evacuation, know that you've got to take all the things you need with you, because if we go mandatory, there's a strong possibility you're not going to be able to go back in and get the things that you left behind. If you need extra time, don't wait. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, so initially when you are evacuated, know that we're going to be setting up what we call a care and reception center. This is going to be in a safe location outside the canyon. It's a place where you can go to get out of harm's way. It does take time to mobilize staff and get the doors open, but at the very least, there's going to be a parking lot where you can wait. Once staff is ready to receive and accept evacuees, they'll be able to provide updates on what's going on with the incident as available. They're gonna hopefully have water, light snacks, maybe some coffee, and there will be folks there to help assist you in locating safe shelter as necessary. If the incident warrants, we will transition that location into an overnight shelter. We do understand that because of COVID, that folks are potentially hesitant to stay in a congregate setting. Please know that we will have COVID safety protocols in place, but if you are not comfortable in a congregate shelter setting, please, you are encouraged to make your own arrangements in advance. Reach out to friends and family who you could potentially stay with if you're evacuated. Know where your local hotels and motels are, and even look into short-term home rentals. There's a variety of companies out there that do that sort of service, provide that service. And then one other thing we do ask that you keep in mind is that this does take time, especially if it's in the middle of the night or on a holiday. It could take 3, 4, 6 hours to mobilize folks and actually get the shelter up and running, cots out, so that you have a place to lay your head. So just really keep that in mind and understand that we will work as quickly as possible. We do pre-stage supplies, but these folks are as far as the Red Cross goes, it's all volunteers. And then our county staff, sometimes people come from quite a far away out of Riverside County and other places. So it could take a long time, but just know we are working as quickly as possible to help assist you. And I think that is all I have. We will be available for questions. So just thank you again for having us this evening. And we're here to support you guys. Thank you.
Delcy, thank you very much. That was good information as well. And a nice segue to our next speaker is Andy Bernard. She's the director of Orange County Animal Care.
Good evening, everyone. All right, there's our slides. Thanks for coming tonight and spending your time with us. This is a very important topic for us that I'll be presenting to you tonight. My name is Andy Bernard, of course, as just mentioned. I am the Director of Animal Care, and I'm going to present to you our few slides here that disasters don't wait. Following along the theme here that we've been talking about all night, we want to be able to plan ahead and be prepared. Next slide, please. Okay, so most importantly, we want to discuss emergency preparedness for pets. And the most important thing, as mentioned, is we must have a plan. So pet owners of both domestic animals as well as livestock should have disaster plans in place to transport and evacuate their animals if needed. We encourage all of you to evacuate early. We want animal owners as well as animal owners under evacuation warnings that are voluntary or even mandatory evacuation orders to we strongly encourage you to evacuate with your pets as early as possible so that we can be sure that resources are available. And if you don't get your things out as well as your pets and important documentation, you may have limited access at that point. And so following a mandatory evacuation order, OC Animal Care will be available to assist residents who cannot carry out their own disaster plans. As resources may be heavily utilized, we encourage all of you to reach out as soon as you have the need for assistance when that becomes apparent. So don't forget, our animal control officers may only enter areas under mandatory evacuation when it has been determined to be safe by the local authorities. So plan ahead. Again, please be sure to utilize the free tools that we have provided at ocpetinfo.com under our Education and Resources tab to assist in your planning. I'll show you that on the next slide. And while OC Animal Care may be able to assist in times of a disaster, it's important to understand that ultimately animal owners are responsible for the evacuation and sheltering of their own pets. During a disaster event, we encourage you to stay informed of the most current information by monitoring local media, Facebook, Twitter, and of course, following us at OC Animal Care or the Sheriff's Department at OC Sheriff, OCFA, and or OC Public Works. Next slide, please. Okay, so here on this page, you're looking at basically the full free toolkit that's available at ocpetinfo.com. On the right of the screen, I suppose, the middle to the right of the screen, you'll see these two pages that are available on our website. And one is the large and small animal evacuation emergency kit that you can find at ocpetinfo.com under the Education and Resources tab. Now on that evacuation emergency kit page that you're looking at here in the middle, you'll see visuals that are basically showing you what you should have prepared prior to evacuating, whether it be voluntary or mandatory. And that is, of course, a trailer to get your large animals out, crates, kennels, items like that. Of course, water for your pets, food, as well as anything that you might need to help feed your pets and or water. ID tags, microchips, information on your microchips, things like that are important, as well as halters and or leashes and collars to keep your pets safe with you, where you've left them or brought them with you. And of course, medical records, anything that might be helpful in the case that your animals do need some sort of medical care and or if they're sheltered, vaccine information in terms of the medical records are also important. We also suggest and encourage, of course, any medication for your pets. And then, of course, an emergency contact list. Anything that you can bring to keep your pets comfortable is important as well. And trash bags. Trash bags can be helpful for a variety of reasons, but most importantly, if there's waste that needs to be disposed of, you should bring trash bags too. On the right, there's the other page that you'll see on our website with the free toolkit, and that is an emergency contact list. That list is very important. You can keep it with your records that you'll utilize when you are voluntarily or mandatorily evacuating. And that is a list of information for folks that you might have phone numbers, addresses, that may help you in transporting and or sheltering your animals outside of the immediate area. Important phone numbers for the Sheriff's Department, your local veterinarian, and or of course OC Animal Care. All of those numbers can be kept there too. Bring them with you so that you have that information immediately when there is natural disaster that you need to be prepared for. And so back over to the left, in the case that you do need any assistance in terms of transport and or sheltering with OC Animal Care, our contact information includes, of course, our address at 1630 Victory Road in Tustin, and our phone number during business hours is 714-935-6848. And of course, overnight, our phone lines are open for assistance, whether it's for transporting and sheltering at 714-259-1122. And so that's all I have for you tonight. But of course, please do reach out if you need anything in that case of emergency. We'll be available to help. And of course, we want all of you to stay safe along with your pets. And so hopefully you reach out to us or go to our website at ocpetinfo.com for help. That's all I have. Thanks, guys.
Andy, thank you very much. Very good reminders for you folks out in the community to make sure your small and large animals are part of your plan during emergency. So great reminders and good information. So Andy, thank you. We're going to circle back with Orange County Fire Authority. Scott Wiedensoller, I think might have been cut off earlier. I'm going to see if he's connected. Scott, if you're there.
Yeah, Shannon, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming back. Sorry about that. I haven't had some technical difficulties, but first off, we want to thank Supervisor Wagner's office, the Orange County Public Works, and Orange County Emergency Operations Center for putting this together so we can share this valuable information with our communities. Division Chief Hunter apologizes that he couldn't be here tonight. He wishes he could, but I'm here in his place. As you mentioned, I'm a battalion chief with the Orange County Fire Authority. I've been in the fire service for a little over 23 years now. And one of my areas of responsibility includes the Canyon communities. Last year, I had the opportunity, I was the initial incident commander of the mud and debris flow that we had out there in March. And for those that don't know, the OCFA is an all-risk fire department, meaning we prepare, train, take classes to respond to any type of emergency. We're responsible for emergency medical services, fires, rescue, and hazard mitigation. Some of the things that we're doing in preparation for this season, and they're ongoing, is to collaborate with the Orange County Public Works, the Emergency Operations Center, and then the Orange County Sheriff's Office. We participate in task force meetings with those agencies. We've already worked on updating and validate and continue to validate the plan for the canyons for mud and debris flow. And then as well as we work with the Office of Emergency Services in the state Cal OES, to pre-position resources. We do this for our wildland fires as well. We have a red flag warning, so we hit certain thresholds for the weather, as we've heard tonight. We also up staff for these events as well in the canyon for the mud and debris flow events. We continue to train at both the crew level with tabletop exercises. We do multi-company evolutions, bringing in our technical rescue specialists, which are folks that are on our urban search and rescue teams, crews and heavy equipment. And then also another resource we have in our Air Ops division that we used heavily back in March is our drone program. We have 8 drone operators with the agency as well. And then at the station level, we ensure that the stations are ready, operationally ready to respond, having sand and sandbags, as was mentioned earlier, from Public Works. And then just like with any large scale incident that we have, we always do an after action review. And so from this last one, we sat down together and we looked at how we can improve and look for areas of opportunity to improve the services that we provide. And so we're just there, as was mentioned earlier, we go into unified command with the Sheriff's Department, with Public Works, certainly as we work through these. Those are some of the things that we do to get prepared for these. And I just appreciate the time that everybody's put in, and just the ability to sit and chat with everyone. I'll be available for questions at the end. Thank you.
Battalion Chief Wiedensoller, thank you so much for that. Scott was the last presenter. We are going to move on to the question and answer portion. And again, here's a reminder for those who might have joined late. or just weren't able to jot this down. If you have questions or want to provide comments, again, as a reminder, here's how you can do it right now. If you signed in either on a computer or your smartphone through the Zoom platform, you can click the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, or click the hand icon to raise your hand. We will call on folks one at a time, just so folks aren't speaking over each other, aren't interrupted. Folks will remain muted until we ask you to unmute. So you will have to unmute yourself. Or three, if you called in via phone, you're driving, or just not on a computer and prefer to call in, you will dial *9 to raise your hand. If you have a question or comment, you need to raise your hand first, *9. And then we call on you one at a time. You'll click *6 to unmute yourself. So again, to raise your hand on the phone, *9, and then to unmute, allowing you to speak, you'll hit *6.
All right, thank you for your patience, everyone. I'll go through the list right now. There was a few folks with their hands raised, starting with, there's initials KM. I'm going to unmute you right now. So you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Can you repeat who that was? Was it KM?
KM. All right, we'll circle back to that one. There's a phone number here ending in 471, and I'm going to unmute you now. And so phone number, to unmute yourself, please dial *6.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Melissa, and I live in Silverado Canyon. And I have a question for AJ Jaime with OC Public Works Operations and Maintenance.
Hello, I'm here. Go ahead.
Hi there. So
Hi.
on July 23rd, there was some illegal grading that took place on Silverado Truck Trail. Are you familiar with that?
I'm slightly familiar with that, but I believe that case was turned over to our code enforcement for investigation.
Okay, it was, and my concern is that nothing has been done since it was reported in July, and there has been significant rockfall and and mudslides up there just from the last rain we had, like a couple, I don't know, weeks or months ago. And my concern is that there was hundreds of cubic yards of debris dumped down into Wildcat Canyon, which feeds into Wildcat Creek. And since nothing's been done, us residents are really concerned about the heightened risk of mudslide that we are facing now. So I'm curious to know what needs to be done to get some action on the grading and remediating that.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that to our attention. I can follow up with our code enforcement staff and see what the latest is on that, and we can get back to you on that.
Okay, I do have emails from some of your code enforcement staff indicating that nothing has been done yet, but they're trying to see what they can do. And I mean, we're on the heels of a pretty significant rain event next week, and I don't think much can be done in a week to help. So we're all nervous here on Wildcat, basically.
Totally understand that, and it's a good question and something that needs to be addressed. So if you can respond to that email and include me on that email list, I'll make sure that somebody follows up on that ASAP.
Phenomenal. Thank you, AJ. And what's your email, or where can I find that?
My email address is aj.jaime, spelled Jaime, at ocpw.com.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and everyone's time tonight.
Oh, let me make a correction on that. It's aj.jaime at ocpw.gov.com.
Okay, got it.
It's a long one.
Okay, thanks again.
You got it.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
All right, thank you. And next is Rich Pfeiffer, and I will unmute you now. And you'll still need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We are at ground zero on the bonfire and also the flash flood that followed. The bonfire started because Edison cut off our power and a neighbor turned on his generator and started the fire. My house was next in line. I happened to have a fire hose and we got through that. The flash flood that ensued, I lost a car, I lost a storage shed and everything in it. I may have been the biggest one lost victim of that flash flood. There is a berm at the top of Anderson, and the last rain we had was only 0.8 of an inch of rain. And the water went to the top of that temporary berm that tried to force the water back into the creek. And above that berm, there is no creek, it's all filled in. We have until Tuesday to increase the level of that berm. If we don't do that, what's going to happen is the water's going to come down Anderson Way again, just like it did. And it's going to create a lot of damage, just like it did. I don't know what else to do. They say OC Public Works is saying it's private property, we're not going to deal with it. But then OCFA has to deal with emergencies, and this is going to be an emergency. So it would be, cost effective to increase the level of that berm now before Tuesday comes. When they cut off our power, you guys need to know this. We cannot call 911. We have no cell phone service. Cox Cable, their battery backup goes out in 4 to 5 hours. If they don't send someone out, we have no communication with the outside world other than our own community radio system that Canyon Watch has done a fabulous job on putting up there. During the bonfire, that radio system burned down and they have put it back up again. And they have batteries and solar panels that can recharge that radio system. Why can't Cox do that? We need to be able to communicate when there's an emergency. And the problem is when the power goes out, we have absolutely no communication. Is anyone going to help us at least increase the level of that berm that's at the top of Anderson Way?
Edward, do you want me to take this on the berm?
Please.
So, yeah. So, Anderson Way, I believe, is a private road, correct? And where the berm sits, I'm not really familiar with what this berm is, but I'm assuming this berm is located on private property. As you know, most of this area drains to the private creek. So from a public works standpoint, all we have is the roadway. And unfortunately, because of county policy, we're not able to go in there and do anything on private property. Our hands are pretty much tied on that one. I wish we could, but it's very difficult for us to do anything out there on private property.
It's on the road.
Okay, it is private property, it's on a private road, and it is a private creek. And the person who owns that property has nothing on that property, so he has no desire to spend any money whatsoever to do any improvements or repairs or maintenance or anything else. OCFA is going to have to come and rescue people and rescue, houses and everything else. It just seems like, there comes a point in time where you have to say, okay, we have a duty to the community to at least prevent what we know is going to happen. Is that okay?
Better.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as of right now, our position is that it's on private property. We can't do anything. I can have an inspector swing by and take a look at it and see if there's anything that we could possibly do on our side. But as of right now, we can't touch anything on private property. This is why it's prudent for a homeowner to realize, or a property owner to realize, where these debris flows are going to come up and try to alleviate that, or try to reduce the risk as much as possible. But from an public works standpoint, we are unfortunately unable to go there and do anything on private property as it stands right now.
So you're telling me that because it's on private property and you know that it's going to create a danger, and you know that it would take minimal effort to reduce that danger, that you're not going to do anything?
Well, AJ, it sounds like your crews are going to have to go out there and take a look, regardless, right?
Yeah, like I said, we're more than willing to go over there and take a look at it and try to brainstorm and discuss what we can do. I'm just letting people know that we are not allowed, per policy, to go into private property and do any remedial work for debris flows, or in general, anything. It's private property. So it would be a gift of public funds if we went out there and started doing work out there. So as of today, as of right now, that's our position. Now, we can have some discussions on the field and see, but again, like I say, I just want to be upfront and honest.
I appreciate your honesty. It doesn't help us. Who knows, we're going to lose more damage and possibly, persons can get injured. We know this is going to happen. It's not a secret. I've been asking for this for some time. And the big, fallback is, oh, it's private property. It's not our problem. It's going to become your problem when the emergency hits.
It's really tough, Rich, because as much as we do want to help legally, we're not able to. Whereas some of the other first responders, they have different funding sources that are meant for that type of thing. Our hands are really quite tied, as we're really there for road and flood control. And all the money we use that we're funded by is restricted by law. So unless there's a declared emergency, we're not allowed to, even if we want to. So it is a tough situation.
So you're telling me that Public Works has no authority to go up there and look at a dangerous situation and say, oh, it's private property, that's not our problem?
We do, and as AJ mentioned, we can take a look at it, but we're not allowed to perform the work.
When you look at it, just realize that the water level on that temporary berm went to the top with only 0.8 of an inch of rain. And when you look at it like that, I know that code enforcement can go up there and they can cite property owners and make them do maintenance on their property to prevent damage to other people. We are in that situation.
I think what we can do is, I'll circle back with our council, and definitely we will do anything within our power. If there's something in there that would allow for it and we see an imminent danger, then, if there's something in the law that would allow us to take some proactive measures, then we'll definitely do that.
Just the last thing I want to say is, when they cut our power off, we can't call 911. We have no cell phone service. We have nothing. And when the Cox batteries run out in 4 to 5 hours, we're done. The only thing we have is our radio system, which has worked pretty well. But we can't call 911. For instance, the bonfire started between 9:30 and 9:40 at night. And I was one of the people that made a mistake. And that fire came directly at my house first, and I happened to have a fire hose. So I hooked up the fire hose and got on that. I should have called, radioed in first that was a fire. OCFA had no idea that the bonfire even existed until 10:15. Just think what they could have done with a 40-minute head start in Santa Ana conditions. And by the way, OCFA has refused to, I suggested to them, when they cut our power, just monitor our radios. We have a repeater, we have over 400 radios in the canyon. They can get more information just monitoring our radios, and they refused. They didn't want the liability.
All
Hi,
right.
this is Michelle Anderson. Just confirming that you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I work for the County in Emergency Management, and I just wanted to address a couple of things that I know Rich has mentioned and that are also in the chat. One specific to the PSPS program. One that is definitely a separate issue from the debris flow. So I'd like to kind of maybe put that a little bit to the side for the purposes of the upcoming storm and the debris flow that we're talking about. Fortunately, the low humidity is not going to be our problem. So Edison should not be exercising that PSPS program. Longer term, though, I would encourage all of you to reach out to the California Public Utilities Commission, the CPUC, because that is actually where that oversight takes place. And so if you reach out to them and you voice your concerns and you let them know about the hazards and vulnerabilities that are being created and about opportunities that you see that Edison might step forward with additional resources for the community, the CPUC is actually going to be the entity that's able to make that happen for all of us. So please do reach out to them. And then separately, maybe just, this is actually a recommendation that I'm going to kind of direct to Public Works, is specific to Rich's concerns. One of the things that, while the county can't go onto private property and take any type of action in terms of the berm, is that maybe while the teams are out there, if they can maybe talk about some hazard mitigation actions that Rich and his neighbors can take. I know that we've talked that through in scenarios in the past, and it was something that they did in Montecito as well, is that there are areas that the homeowners are in control of. And so maybe there are some processes or procedures or protective measures that each of you individually can take in order to help mitigate. If you know that that debris flow is going to be coming towards your homes. I know it's extremely complicated, but as long as the teams are going out there and conducting the assessments, right, let's maybe focus on the actions that we can take.
Thank you, Michelle.
Another thing I'm just thinking about right now that might be able to assist you with that situation is, I know we had other areas where we've had some debris flows that have impacted some private properties. There is another organization called Team Rubicon, and they will come out and help with possibly building this berm for you that you're looking for. So that might be something that you might want to reach out to your community leaders out there.
All right, so we have a few more questions and then quite a few typed into the Q&A. So I will move on now to Paul Dixon, and I will unmute you now. All right, Paul, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, looks like it did. Paul, we can't hear you.
Hello.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, I'm here. I'm a neighbor of Rich Pfeiffer. I've lived here for 30 years, and I keep hearing the same problem coming up, and that is that we live on private property. We pay taxes like every other person in Orange County. And we are told they can't sweep our streets because they're privately maintained. We hear every excuse possible to keep their hands out of any help for us. And I agree with Rich. We're seeing that we have private property owners that you say you can't go onto their land, but I'm not hearing that they have refused your access. And they have an interest in retaining access to their property. And I don't see that we're getting any direction other than to how to flee our property. What do you think?
Yes, and again, we'll do again whatever is in our power to do. We will revisit any regulations to determine if there's any means that we have to be proactive on private property. But in the absence of that, the most we can do is assist. And as Michelle suggested, perhaps we can take a look at some of these high-risk areas, make suggestions, put you in contact with some of these community groups who are able to work on private property. Unfortunately, for now, that's kind of the limitation of what we're able to do.
I'm going to ask you again, if an owner gives permission to work on his property, can you be of help?
It has less to do about the permissions and more to do about, again, the way that we're funded and the use of these tax dollars, which are very specific to what they can be used on. So, and again, it's not anything that we created. It's something that exists throughout all of California.
Well, here's what I'm finding out. Back in the day, when Orange County decided that they had gone under a bankruptcy, they sold off properties that includes the creek that should not have ever been transformed into private property. And when they did that, they released themselves of any control over drainage. And what they did was they reassessed these properties as zero value when they sold them off, so that anyone that procured these properties would not have to pay any taxes on it. And it became a very complicated thing, but the bottom line is that the county released themselves from original tract maps of any responsibility for county property, which was primarily creeks and areas of negative responsibility. I know this is really too complicated for you to think about right now, but through a lot
it's definitely something I would like to look into if this was a past decision that was made.
Yeah, you should, because amongst other things, private citizens have said, oh no, you can't come down into the creek because it's my property. But there's other areas that should be explored that say, no, you don't have a right to a creek. And I know this, it gets really complicated, but what you should look into is to what is really private and what is really necessary to protect the public. We are all taxpayers.
Hi, Paula. This is AJ. I've been with the county almost 32 years now, and I don't recall the county selling off any property there, but we can look into that. I believe those creeks were always private. They came with the property owners, same property lot lines. But we can look into that. I don't know what we can do about that, but again, see, there's the cutoff line, right? So it's, as you know, living in the canyons in the rural area, it's a beautiful place to live. It's quiet. It's really beautiful. It's nice. But with that comes a lot of risk. There's fires, there's winds, there's storms, floods, now debris flows. All that comes with owning private property. The county legally is, all we have, so if you can understand that, all we have is the roadway. That's the only county road right away. That's all we have. There's a few streets in between in the canyons that we own, and they're in our county roadway system. So if they're in our county roadway system where they've gone to the board and been accepted, then we have an obligation to ensure the safety of the public. But right now, where it stands, we're not able to go into the private property and perform any type of work like that as it stands. And if we did that, go ahead.
That's all very convenient.
I wish we could. Look, if it was my money and I could,
Everybody
I
wishes
definitely
they
would go there
could,
and help you out.
But you can't. So we're seeing,
Yes, my
we're
hands
seeing
are tied.
rain coming up on us on Tuesday, and we may have more flooding and all that, but you couldn't even bring one K-rail up here that's 10 feet long to help us with our problem. That's interesting. Okay, good night.
All right. We'll move on to the typed question and answers. And we have one here from 6:07 p.m. Anonymous attendee asking what measures are in place for tonight's and tomorrow's expected rainstorm. I believe some of the panelists touched on this earlier. The rainstorms expected tonight and tomorrow, we're not hitting the thresholds in the response plan, but I'll defer to the other panelists if they want to chime in on that.
From a public works standpoint, we will be providing sandbags for anybody who'd like to come down and take up some up to protect their property or divert some of the runoff. We will again have those available. They can call that number that was given out earlier, that 714-955-0200. Make an appointment and we can have those available to you.
All right, thank you. Next question from 6:22 p.m. Wondering why the county is allowing topping off of trees along the canyon and Santiago. This one is also related to the Edison actions, which are outside of the county's control, but Michelle Anderson had mentioned earlier, this is something that should be directed to CPUC and something that needs to be addressed in that plan. And Michelle, I'm not sure if you wanted to add to that, or if not, we can continue to move on.
Oh, yeah, I think that's an accurate answer. Again, as they're going out and doing work along the lines, those are all things that are governed by the CPUC. And so again, I know I've seen a couple of people posting comments in there as well. It is an ongoing concern, especially the county agrees with everyone on this. And so the CPUC is where we're all going to make a difference. And so please continue the pressure that you're applying there, because the more of us that are applying that pressure, the more likely we are to get action by the CPUC. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have another question here, 6:59 p.m. Also about White Canyon and Anderson Way, which I believe we have discussed that earlier. Another comment, 7:03 p.m., anonymous attendee. Also talking about SCE power shutoffs. This one again, back to the CPUC. All right, another question about 2011, we're actively experiencing flooding, called 911 for help. And told that we were on our own because it was a private road and no services would be available. Is this still true? So this one, I'm not certain about the details of that one.
And really quick, before we turn that over, because I think both law and fire can both respond to that. Again, from the county emergency management perspective, you know, we definitely try and put warnings and orders for evacuations out early. We try and notify the community that there is going to be a danger, especially when it relates to debris flow, because once the debris flow is happening, we have to be very cautious about actually creating more life safety issues by sending first responders into harm's way. And so with that, I would ask either law or fire if you wanted to address that. I know it's somewhat true too for public works. When you guys are going into an area, you're having to make sure that the land is stable before you go into it. But I think that that's a kind of a field-based question.
Yeah, this is Scott Wiedensoller from OCFA. I don't know the circumstances of the call, so it's kind of hard to respond. I think we'd be hard pressed to tell somebody that information. Obviously, we do. We've kind of got. We typically amongst our ranks will say we risk a lot to save a lot, risk little to save little. But if there's a human life involved and on the line, I don't think there's at any point that we would stop before we mitigated the emergency. So sometimes there are circumstances where we'll send our helicopters overhead if they're able to fly, and if we need to make an announcement that if we have to delay our tactics, that might be done. But I can't see at any point that we would say that somebody was on their own.
All right, thank you. And all right, moving on to the next question. This is regarding the work report. So there were a few about the work report, and we're definitely going to relay all of these comments to Unified Command. The work report was prepared by CAL FIRE, and we'll be sure to note that on our copies so that we make those corrections. The next question, 7:15 p.m. Preparations are well planned and presented. Unfortunately, reality is significantly different. No way of receiving information alerts or other information when power is down. So okay, this is another one, again, related to the power and CPUC. Here's a question, 7:32 p.m. What level of work can homeowners do if a creek is swelling and debris is filling the creek? Are we allowed to pull debris from the creek?
I'll take that one, Edward. And a quick answer to that would be yes. If it's an emergency and we have, like in an event like that, and various bridges on the creeks, maybe counties anyways, and we own them. So we do have that right to do that. So it depends on where it's located, but we do have the ability to remove debris from the creeks at bridges if it was causing an overtopping scenario. And the way we could justify that is if we didn't remove this debris from the creek or the bridge, it could possibly impact our roadways. So we'd have to look at the scenario and situation. But again, the county does own some bridges out there. So we have the ability to do that. But it would be a on-site visual to determine that. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And looks like we have a hand raise here from Paul Burgess. And let's see, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just did. I just wanted to take a moment to address the question that had to do with the VAR BND 56. And basically the explanation is this, is that when we look at the data that we use to make this WERT report, and also that we use for all of the WERT reports statewide, we use a base data set from Esri, which is the company that produces the product, ArcGIS, the mapping platform. And so when you use the Esri base map, Finn Lane, which is the location in question, is projected as a small street on the order of about, I would say, 250 feet long, that projects to the south east from Hazel Bell Drive. And so the community is Hazel Bell Drive, absolutely, but within the greater level of accuracy that we're permitted when we're making with these maps, we always strive to be as accurate as possible. And so that's why that location is assigned that location. That VAR has that location on Finn Lane because that's what the map shows. I will say, doing a quick cross check with Google Maps, many people use Google Maps. That particular street, Finn Lane, does not show up. You can zoom in until you're looking at green pixels and you won't see it. So we recognize that has created some confusion. We can be mindful of that going forward, but we stand by the location and also of the description of the possible of why the value at risk was deemed to be a value at risk. So I just wanted to add that before we got too much further along in the chat, and leave that there for the time being. Anybody has any, please follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
We have another hand raised here from the attendees, Barbara Duran. And I'll unmute you now.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi. You got my husband and I are on the call. We do have an issue about the WERT report, and I appreciate Paul's description that Finn is part of the. No, my husband is going to take over. Meet Paul.
Yes, the comments that were previously stated, I didn't catch the gentleman's name. There's a problem with that, and Finn Lane is not 250 feet, and it's not in the measure number 4, the description, consider evacuation. This resident needs a debris barrier, retaining walls, adequate drainage, additional landslide hazard due to likely non-permitted grading and construction. There are only 2 homes on Finn Lane. It is really just my driveway. So the statement about the gentleman that previously stated that he stands by his description is borderline, well, let's not go there. This needs to be corrected. It is not Finn Lane. Wherever the pictures were taken, it is not my driveway. We do not have likely non-permitted grading and construction. This needs to be corrected. We are not part of BDN 56. And if this is not corrected immediately, and Finn Lane taken off of that description, then, the recourse. And this is just, it is saying that my home has illegal grading. So whoever wrote this needs to come out tomorrow and identify where these photographs were taken, because it is not my home and it is not Finn Lane, and we are not part of BDN 56. Am I clear?
Yes, thank you. And Paul, I'm not sure if you want to respond or that's just something you'll bring back.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I appreciate your commentary, Paul. As you saw, you emailed us, everybody that was a part of that report a little bit ago. You also received a reply, and we will be looking into it further to clarify the issue for you. And when we are able to do that, we will be in touch at our earliest available opportunity. So.
Yes, and I would like it posted that that is not Finn Lane. We take great pride in our driveway and my home, and we don't do such thing as non-permitted grading and construction. This is a permitted home. We raised our family here, and I can understand because of our driveway, there is a sign for the UPS driver and Amazon to find our driveway, and perhaps going down the street as they proceeded, I would suppose that where these pictures were taken may have been misconstrued as the name. Well, the name is incorrect. So I am appalled. I appreciate the work that has gone into this, and going over it, it's all the work that everyone has done has been very helpful. But when we read that part, we were flabbergasted, and so my consternation, as I'm sure that you can tell by
Our home has been mischaracterized.
yeah. So please get back to me. You have my
Sure.
email. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
sir.
we do. Actually, I was going to add something, but I'll let John Oswald, who, like I mentioned, was the lead on our report here, chime in. Kevin, I think if there's a way to activate John's mic, he will.
Yeah, I'm in.
Oh, there you go, John. Thank you.
Hi, Paul. I just want to follow up on that too and apologize. Do you have a map of that BND 56 that you see that you're describing right now in front of you?
I do.
Okay, and is that so? Is that you're basically saying that that is the wrong location for that polygon?
Correct. Well,
okay.
No, the polygon is correct. The street is not Finn Lane.
Okay, so there's do you see that street on that like kind of diagonal southwest southeast trending street
No
on
comment.
the map?
No comment.
I mean, but do you see that? I'm just but it, I'm not saying if it is there or not. I mean, we have the map that's there, and I'm just saying what I'm trying to get is if that polygon is in the right place or not. And is your house in that polygon?
It is not.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out.
If you Google map,
Yep.
you can see our house. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, but so the photograph of the two firemen, firefighters,
yep,
is not behind our house. So the identification of Finn Lane, it is not Finn Lane, and I will leave it to you to figure out where this picture was taken.
Yeah,
it's
no,
not
I get that. Sometimes the pictures can bleed over. I'm just, I just want to trying to make sure that that polygon, that BND 56,
it's not Finn Lane.
it's not Finn Lane, but was it near? I mean, is there houses look back there in that location?
There's just my house and
Okay.
my neighbor's house, but where you have this it's not Finn Lane. My house Finn Lane is really just my driveway that they need.
Yeah, no, I'm getting that. So sometimes these polygons can jump, they can like by air, they can move. I'm trying to wonder, we'll definitely have to go out there and take a look at this and
yes,
work
please.
that out. This is a high hazard. That hazard looks right for that basin, but you're telling me the pictures are wrong, so we need to double check.
Well, the identification is incorrect. The pictures, I can't say one way or another, but I know that's not our property. And that's not, Finn Lane is not oriented in that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's an Esri mistake of how they drew that.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
so
the map you're seeing there.
what really caught my attention is just like, non-permitted grading and construction. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunate, and luckily it's not your house.
Well,
apologize, but
not. Here's the thing. Now it's part of a report, so I'm waiting for the the insurance agent and the president and everybody else to come over and ask me what's going on with my grading stuff, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, wait a minute, that's not us. So to accurately identify wherever this picture was taken would be the right thing to do.
yeah, no, we will be on that as soon as possible, and we will have that corrected. I apologize, Paul.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much. Okay.
All right.
Well, good evening, and thank you again for everybody's hard work. We appreciate, my wife and I and our children appreciate all the work that everybody's doing to help the canyons and East Orange County. I really do. So if my consummation was a little over the top, I do apologize for that. And I would like to thank you for looking into this detail for me.
All right, thank you very much. And we have one last hand raised, David Peterson. And you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I don't know if Paul Burgess is still here, but I was able to chat with him and the other folks who were part of the team, the WERT folks, and they were hiking behind my house and all back up into the area that burned badly. And we talked about that region, and BND 56 is right next to my house on Hazel Bell. It's Hazel Bell, and those anyone who walks up Hazel Bell will recognize those pictures. They're easy to identify. So I know it's not Finn.
All right.
It's Hazel Bell, but other than the Finn part, I think it's the photos are of an existing place.
I really appreciate that that information. I think Paul will be out tomorrow or within a couple days, and we'll find those photos located and get this corrected.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, David. So as far as the remaining questions, there are quite a few in a similar vein about some of the challenges with Edison and responsiveness from CPUC. And there are additional ones, again, about requesting work on private property. And, it's not empty words when I say we really do wish that we could do more. It truly is not just, it's not a policy, not some kind of internal policy that prevents us from doing it, but rather it is a law that governs us, and that's really what restricts us. But again, we will, investigate any avenue that we have to help, and that's what we can do for now. With that, I'll turn it back over to Shannon, if you would like to close.
Sure, thanks, Edward. You just go to the next slide.
All right.
I believe is the next slide. Oh, maybe a couple back. I thought that there might have been some information. One more, please. Here we go. I just wanted to leave this with folks. Obviously, those who lived in the canyons quite a while, very familiar with Public Works, Fire Authority, Sheriff's Department, interact with our folks who are out there quite often, know how to reach us. But for those folks unfamiliar, these are some helpful resources. A couple of the bigger ones, you've heard about them earlier in the meeting, were Alert OC, so alertoc.com. That's the mass notification system where you can receive phone calls, text, emails when emergency notifications are being issued. So go to that site if you haven't already, alertoc.com, sign up for those emergency notifications. That's critical. And the other, to help you prepare proactively, get a plan together, readyoc.org. And here are some other resources for the agencies that you've heard from tonight: Sheriff's Department, Fire Authority, Public Works, and also the emergency management folks up there at our Emergency Operations Center. So even, before, as we lead up to rain, just like now in the coming days, and during a rain event or emergency or mudslide, these are very helpful resources to track and monitor. You can monitor news media as well, TV and radio, but also Facebook and Twitter, where updates are posted during events and immediately after heavy rains, if there's impacts like mud and debris flows. So please make note of these. Be sure to follow these, maybe bookmark these sites. Very helpful for updates. And with that, that will conclude our meeting. I want to thank all the panelists tonight. I want to thank Supervisor Don Wagner of the 3rd District for joining us, providing an update and his take on it as well. Just a reminder, this meeting tonight was recorded. So we're going to post that. We'll post it on the website that we saw, ocpublicworks.com/bond debris. And also we'll work with the Sheriff's Department to put a link to this on their Emergency Management Division page for the bonfire burn area. We'll work to get a link there as well. So tell your neighbors if they were unable to join this meeting was recorded, and you will be able to view it at a later time at your convenience. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for our presenters, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules, especially during the holiday season here. So thank you very much and wish you a good night.